Good morning. Because of some problems with power in town, we were not able to record this at church, so I'm recording this from my home office again. We start a new series today. Pastor Don calls it the fourth quarter, and today's lesson is from the book of Ecclesiastes. And we turn today not to where your mind may have went when I said Ecclesiastes, not the third chapter, but the first chapter. And so listen to these words that Solomon has written here. What do people gain from all the hard work that they work so hard at under the sun? A generation goes and a generation comes, but the earth remains as it always has. The sun rises, the sun sets, it returns panting to the place where it dawns. The wind blows to the south, goes around to the north. Around and around blows the wind. The wind returns to its rounds again. All streams flow to the sea, but the sea is never full. To the place where the rivers flow, they continue to flow. All words are tiring, no one is able to speak. The eye isn't satisfied with seeing, neither is the ear filled up by hearing. Whatever has happened, that's what will happen again. Whatever has occurred, that's what will occur again. There's nothing new under the sun. People may say about something, look at this, it's new. But it was already around for ages before us. As I said, this comes from Solomon. It comes from a section of scripture called wisdom literature. And I talked about this a little bit when we looked at the passage from Esther several weeks ago. There is a series of books in the Old Testament that are referred to as wisdom literature. Three of those books, interestingly, are attributed to Solomon. Song of Solomon, Proverbs, and Ecclesiastes. Ruth and Esther are part of this writing. Nehemiah and Ezra are also part of this section. And it's a type of scripture or a type of literature that was used at different times by the people to communicate the truths about God. And so we find this in our scripture. And as I said, three of them attributed to Solomon. Solomon reigned, his kingdom was from 970 to 931 BCE, before the Common Era. There is a little bit of a problem from the academic world in that there are some words that are used in this book of Ecclesiastes that come from Persia. And their use in the Persian language would date sometime between 450 BC and 180 BCE. Now, these are words that Solomon would not have known, could not have used. So that presents a problem. On the one hand, the question is, did Solomon actually write Ecclesiastes, or did somebody else write it and attribute it to Solomon? From what I have read and thinking about the different points of view, it seems to me that what has happened here is that what Solomon wrote was edited at a later time in that time period of between 450 and 180 BCE, and that these Persian words were used in an effort to bring clarity and better understanding to what Solomon has written here. This was the editing by scribes as they copied the scriptures. This was not unheard of, and it was done fairly frequently. In the Dead Sea Scrolls, they have evidence of this in that writings that they can attribute to one particular scribe or another, and seeing that it differs from other copies of Scripture that they have. And the only way to explain some of this is that it was editing for the sake of clarity and understanding. There is a sense when you read Ecclesiastes that life is meaningless, that there's no purpose. If anybody lived with a silver spoon, it would have been Solomon. Solomon came into the king, his reign. He came after his father David had conquered the land, had subjected the surrounding peoples, and there was a prosperity and a peace. And there were riches, wealth that David had accumulated. And Solomon accumulated more through trade, through his political ambitions, his interactions with other kingdoms around him, but mostly, it seems, through his marriages, his political marriages is what I call them, that were done to benefit mainly Solomon. And he had many wives. And it seems that these many wives, many of them from pagan cultures outside of the Hebrew faith, seem to have served to corrupt Solomon and corrupt his faith in God. And you see that reflected, I think, particularly here in Ecclesiastes, when it seems like there is nothing there. The three writings that I mentioned earlier that come from Solomon, the Song of Solomon and Proverbs and Ecclesiastes, there's a sense, I think, that you could attribute these to different times in Solomon's life, that the Song of Solomon being part of his youth, his energy and his love there. Proverbs through middle age, his middle age, when he started to accumulate and understand the wisdom that he has. And Ecclesiastes, from his old age, looking back and reflecting and not seeing a whole lot of purpose about his life in general, his life and life in general. This, as I was thinking about that, I remembered something that one of the copy machines that I worked on when I worked for Xerox, the operator had taped this to the end of her machine. And it was one of these sayings that gets passed around. Before the internet, it would have been copied and photocopied and have dots all over it where it had been copied and copied and copied. Now it's something that people just pass along the internet. And I don't remember it exactly, but it went something like this. That when I was a young person, when I was 20 years old, that I thought my father was not very bright. As I got older and I got to be 40 years old, I realized that my father did have some wisdom, that he wasn't a complete idiot. And then when I got to be 60, I came to realize that my father was probably the smartest man that I had come across. I don't think Solomon was seeing that here, but it shows this progression of thought as you move through life, that you see things differently at different stages of your life. And depending on where you're at in your life, if you're like me, you're looking back on a large portion of your life, and there are things that you reflect on, and you see how things have changed over the years there. That's one place where I differ in my outlook than Solomon did in writing Ecclesiastes, in that I do see that there is purpose, that there is a progression in life. When we look at Scripture, which is a story of God's interaction with humanity, when we look at this from Genesis through to Revelation, which it's, the story doesn't end with Revelation. It's a story that continues to go on. You see that there is a progression through life, and we're part of that progression and moving on there. Wanted to close by going to the end of what Solomon has written here in Ecclesiastes, because it shows that he did come to some understanding, or that it was not all hopelessness, that there was some good out of it. At the 12th chapter, starting with the 12th verses, 12th through the 14th. Be careful, my child, of anything beyond them. There's no end to the excessive production of scrolls. Studying too much wearies the body. So this is the end of the matter. All has been heard. Worship God and keep God's commandments, because this is what everyone must do. God will definitely bring every deed to judgment, including every hidden thing, whether good or bad. So it seems that Solomon did come to some understanding that in our human understanding, it may seem that there isn't any point to it, but that with God, that there is a point, and that we should be trusting in God. We move on next week in this fourth quarter series to what Pastor Don has called special teams. And we'll be looking at the scripture from 1 Corinthians, if you want to look that and read ahead here. 1 Corinthians, the 12th chapter, verses 12 through 31. And we'll see where we go with that with special teams. Hope to see you in worship later on this morning, and hope that God's blessings will flow upon you. And again, if there are those that you think might enjoy these humble words, please pass them on and share them with other people. Thank you for watching.